Welcome, everybody. Good to see you here today.
No,
Hope you're doing well. We're just going to give folks
I
a
hope
minute or two to arrive. And as people do, you're invited to maybe put in the chat what retreat center you're at and what your name is, and perhaps um, uh, what in territory you're on. So I'll just put an example here in for you. And I see someone has requested to have a note taker. I don't think we can have two running at the same time. So I'm going to decline that. I'm so sorry. Um, but we will do a good blog on our website, and the video will be posted in a few days of this call. So that's a really great way to grab that. But I learned the hard way the other day that we can't record and have someone else recording at the same time. Um, Welcome, everybody. As you make your way in, we're glad you're here. If you can just throw your name and where you're from and who you are, and perhaps your Indigenous territory into the chat, that'd be great. We're going to get started here in a minute. Find your way here. So glad you're here. All right, we're going to let others just roll in as they come. But I want to introduce myself. My name is Michael, and I am the network manager for the RCC. And I'm so thrilled to welcome you here along with my colleague Pam, who is the team coordinator. And Pam is here to support us today. We're thrilled that you found your way here. And I want us just to take a moment to arrive. So, this is a chance just to take your hands off your keyboard or put your phone down or your pen down, to just sit in your chair, maybe find both your feet on the floor, open up those hands, open up your body. Let's just take a few breaths in together. Find a moment of stillness, moment of center, a moment to breathe in the goodness, to set aside all that is happening in our centers and in our lives and in our world for a moment to be here, to connect with ourselves and to connect with this community. We breathe in and we breathe out and we find our way here. So, friends, here we are. Find your way back. I think I could have done that for the full hour. I want to introduce to some of you, maybe it's your first time, and to many, you've had many chances now to work here together with Tatyana Sanikovich. Tatyana is going to be leading our session today on recruitment. And we're so grateful, Tatyana, for all that you've offered to RCC over the last many months. These hour-long lunch tea times have been so fun and so informative. I will just take this moment to plug that we have a three-part series coming up with Tatyana. It is a paid series to deepen into the onboarding part of HR. It's I think, a very accessible, low-cost opportunity, a lower cost for members. So if you aren't a member, this is your chance to become a member and access that lower rate. But if you have any more questions about that, please send myself or Pam or Tatyana an email, and it's on our website under the events section. So check that out. Without further ado, though, I'd like to turn it over to you, Tatyana, to take us into today. Thank you so much for being here. Deep appreciate it.
thank thank you, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I love that everybody's like popping up. The chat is popping up and alive. What I'm noticing, this is I'm going to speak, is this a new thing for Zoom? Because what I realized is there's more people on the call, and when the cameras are off, they're not showing up in the gallery view. Is everybody else has noticed? Like, do people have people with no camera in your gallery? I'm not sure, just curious.
You
You
can
do.
use that as a setting. So you can either
I
set it
don't.
one way or the other. Yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Gallery. Anyway, that would just be how it is. What I wanted to start with before we jump, as you know, I have a presentation, I've thought through things, and then last night I was like, you know what? I'm gonna flip it on its head. And I'm gonna start because we always, with me having a lot of information or a lot of conversation with all of you, I always feel like the Q&A doesn't happen. So it's not the exact Q&A, but what I wanted to start with actually is if you could pop into chat when it comes to recruitment or like why you came to this conversation, like what is alive for you right now about that topic? And I actually want to take a minute or two just for all of us to read so I could see what's in those questions. And, as I go through the conversation or we'll have a breakout. So then each of you can kind of meet another or a couple individuals. But I just want to see if I can fit things to what's alive for you at the moment. So if you could take a minute or so and pop in the chat what's alive for you in terms of recruitment topic right now. Why are you here? I know I'm here because I love all this stuff. But I really, really would love to know. Um, it's lovely to see some faces I've never seen before. Peter, you have a new hairdo. I like it. I have to say. My executive director reminded me to join. I love that. Okay, it's very good, honest. Seasonal retreat centers are rural mountains, so we hire almost entirely new staff each season. That's a could be a challenge and an opportunity, and have a limited local talent pool. So conducting that process intentionally, something. Yes, that's perfect. Alexander just said on an interview yesterday of a perspective for the summer, all aspects. Yep, trying to figure out perspectives to find longer term employees, what recruitment trends. Hold on, where are we here? Yep, attention to what distracts from this success measure, finding qualified candidates who are interested in living in Big Bear, which is 2 hours east of Los Angeles. So thank you all for writing. There's, as you could see, there's seasonality, there's long term, there is the depth of the recruitment and the talent pool that we're looking for. Remoteness, a lot of retreat centers for the beauty and the aliveness of the experience for attendees. They're in a lot of them are in very remote locations, which comes with its challenge of where do you find your skill people and if there is a change. I'll add that we're trying to think through how to get in front of the right candidates. Seasonal recruitment, another one. The volunteer recruiter here and still developing intuition, how to recruit, how to lower turnover rate, how to communicate best with candidates before they get here. Oh, this is great. Thinking a lot of infrastructure, how to think through best practices about hiring for emerging roles, especially when you know you need support, but the structure is still taking shape. So there's definitely some things that I would discuss and keep popping them in because I'll look into that as well as we go through. So let me share something, how to conduct, there we go, how to conduct the actual hiring interview process to get the right people in the role. So one thing I want to point is as we are looking into all of these questions, and actually as I was preparing for this webinar, I realized that this is similar to how kind of the onboarding topic was happening. It's a big topic. It could go for we can have several conversations because there's various aspects, as you could say. Conducting an actual hiring interview process is one thing. Figuring out your seasonal staff and the turnover and making it as sustainable as it is for the organization could be another thing. Like just overall, what are the best practices? Just as you intentionally setting things for your recruitment, for your team, for your organization, for yourself as a leader is another topic. So even though we'll brush through, I think some of them, you can always reach out for in-depth question to me. By all means, absolutely, you're welcome to do that. And then maybe, depending how the onboarding webinar, how that series goes, maybe we'll have a recruitment series in terms of the hiring and interviewing and all of those parts. So let me share um, the presentation with you. All right, can you see just the thumbs up for me? Can you see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So actually, I'm not going to put in a big slideshow because I actually want to see you guys and just and tell me if it's too distracting for you that, it's not in a slide show mode, but I just wanted to talk through things with you and also see your comments as we go. So pop them in. I'm gonna do my best to slow down and address as things come up. As you can see, when I get really excited and very passionate about something, I can try to squeeze as much information as possible. So, interview and recruitment. So my biggest thing is I hope I thread through all of our conversation is who are you becoming as a leader in any of the topics that I cover? This is no exception. This is one of the most important ones, actually, is who are you becoming as a leader through your hiring decisions? So one of as you interview, and there was some of the questions there as well. When you interview, what role are you occupying? And are you aware of that role, right? So are you a gatekeeper of the values and the culture, or I don't know, the department? Sometimes it's like, I'm hiring for this department, but don't take this person to this department. Are you a rescuer? Are you trying to find this person needs a job? And then you're like, well, where can I find the place for that person? The person is a really nice person. So are you playing that role? Collaborator, a lot of times is figuring things out how, maybe this person might not be a great fit for this role, but keeping in mind there might be a better fit for another role in another department, for example, or just so keep that in mind. Judge. No, I mean I've played all of these for sure. My mind, thanks to my, I think, background, I'm going to blame it on my genetics from Belarus and Russia, could be quite judgmental. So it'd be like, what's this box? How open-minded are we when we see the person and how they communicate in the skills? Or just a tired human who needs help. So here is definitely a case from my own experience. It was 2017, and we had massive layoffs at Esalen. Um, and for those who haven't met here, my background is in HR, hospitality, nonprofits, and retreat centers. And the last one was at Esalen Institute for 12 years. So in 2017, we had layoffs. We went from like 256 people to 50 because of the nature and the road closures and everything. And then we had to rebuild. And so I was a tired human who needed help because it was just me and rebuilding the whole organization to whatever degree we needed to rebuild it. And so at that time, I had somebody who was eager, who was kind of enthusiastic, matched the values of the organization. But what I learned in about 30 to 45 days, she did not match the delivery. So there was very little follow through. There was very little accountability. The hard decisions were hard for her to be had. And so I had to make a decision to whether kind of cobble this along, but it wasn't working for me at all. And so we parted ways and I had to start all over. But that experience taught me that the importance of that, like from what place am I hiring, but also making a decision as we're having that onboarding piece and paying attention to what do I need it, like what I needed from that person in that role overall, actually follow through, ownership, and being able to communicate and have difficult conversations, I think comes in any role or is needed, and particularly in the HR department. And so that was my learning experience. And I started over and I built a team, and I had a terrific team in terms of the HR department, and then overall the organization. But actually coming to Esalen, we had to do layoffs two more times until I said, I'm done. I'm gonna go do on my own. So that kind of piece repeated, even though after the first one, I was like, I don't ever want to do this again or wish this upon anybody. So notice what role you're playing. And what a lot of times happens is, and I think Katya, you brought that up as well, is that we are a lot of times, I mean, majority of leaders are not trained to interview, to hire, unless they actually train themselves and learn and kind of get those skills. But particularly retreat centers, we are trained to care. We are certain personalities, a lot, majority, that are attracted to this work, not just nonprofit work, but retreat center work. And so the what I'm always reminding is for myself a reminder as well, recruitment is a mirror for all of us in that regard. So notice like that my example was the relief versus clarity. And I'll speak to this over and over in terms of how it's important. Clarity is one of the most important things that I will also thread through is, are you clear what you're hiring? Are you clear what your ideal candidate, what qualities the person needs to have? Are you clear where this person is going to fit in the organization? Are you clear what the success for this individual, this role in 30, 60, 90 in a year looks like? When we don't have clarity and we start recruiting from that place, the ambiguity, the emergent, the I will figure it out as we go, it creates a lot of difficulty. And a lot of times we do not hire the right people. Let me see. Any thoughts, questions so far? One thing about relief and clarity is relief is emotional and clarity is structural. So what relief says for me, I just need someone to take this off my plate. I've definitely done that. But clarity says this is the exact outcome I need delivered. So it's been very clear, what do you need to see as a function, as a delivery? Not, is this person a nice person? Are they kind? It's like, that's not a question at all. There are definitely certain qualities in retreat center settings. There is the welcoming, the hospitality, all of those pieces. But what I'm also noticing with some clients is, there's an organization I work with and everybody's kind or nice, actually. But that is taken to the extreme to where nobody is speaking to when things arise that are not comfortable, or everybody's taking everybody's stuff to be like, oh, I'll help and I'll help. And then at the end of the day, things are slipping through the fingers and a lot of people feeling very overwhelmed with the amount of work that they didn't say no to, at least renegotiate what's possible for them and what's not. So those are the pieces that are really, really important. I'm going to talk about below the line hiring and above the line. And the aspect of this below and above the line for me comes from conscious leadership. It's kind of like the set level is the line. When we go below the line, then we're in this hero, victim, like we're in this triangle, the drama triangle, what also comes to. So we come from a place of trigger, reaction. It's definitely not our highest self and definitely not much clarity of it. So notice when you're hiring or we're starting to hire, what place are you coming from? Back to that intention and clarity, right? So undefined roles, and I'll speak to some of this, particularly the authority, softened authority, hiring nice, avoiding hard questions, and urgency driving decisions. So a couple of things I want to highlight. Job descriptions. I can't talk enough, and I know it's like people are like, oh my God, the job description. And you don't have to have granular, like to the T. However, it's in the process of clarifying the job description, not for the person, for the job that you need done. It's where a lot of the rubber meets the road, things happen. And when you start hiring, and I've experienced it, I have experienced with the clients, when we don't hire from that clear space of at least defining the role, so it's undefined, lots of candidates look good enough, or lots of candidates don't look like they're going to fit the role. So you're always swimming in this, again, ambiguity or a difficulty making a decision. When you have that clarity about the job, it's a lot easier. Plus, what's also happening, remember, this is all relational. It's a dialogue with those who are applying for the job. They read the job description. They look at it, at least that's my assumption. And when I interview the person, that's what I'm checking for. These are the parts of the job that are needed to be done, which is interesting on a side note. There was a study, totally just popped into my mind. When females read a job description, they check all the bullet points. And if they have not done, I think like 20%, 25% of the bullet points that are on a job description, they won't even apply. Males will look at the job description. So there's nothing personal to our group here. They'll look at the job description. And if they have done 20% of the bullet points of their job description, they will apply. That's it. That's a fact. That study was actually done, I think, at least 10 years ago. I think it's even bigger, probably gap. But I always bring it forward as, it definitely rises with lots of smiles on people's face. But I want you to remember that for you is whatever gender you occupy and whoever you're hiring, think about that. I mean, I can't tell you, and there's endless amount of conversations I've had with females, friends, or clients where they're like, oh, this is a cool job, but I'm not qualified. I'm like, hold on. Just to apply. And so when you're getting a pool is also, or when you're talking to people, is to encouraging and just to pay attention to like who is applying, where they're applying from, like what place. Um, you can't think things for everybody, but just to have that awareness. I'll talk about authority a bit more, but the whole hiring nice, that happens quite a bit when we hire. The hiring nice to me is we know the person will be amendable and would be kind of will fit into not having difficult conversations and not questioning things. And so it's like, oh, this is great. You won't have a lot of innovation. You will not have a lot of creativity if everybody agrees to particularly, I mean, conflict also, I would encourage everybody to have a healthy relationship with it and kind of the communication and conversations to be in a healthy way. But things won't change. We will stay the same way if everybody agrees. If everybody agrees with me and doesn't bring things to me to be like, hey, what about this? Things are just gonna, I think, to get more and more narrow from my point of view. Avoiding hard questions, and I'll come back to that a little bit more. That's one of the things I always ask, Katya, to your question, to be like, what's the interview question? One of the questions I ask any position at any time, give me an example of a conflict or disagreement you have had with, and I always ask three things, with a colleague, a person you reported to, and if a person was a leader, a person who reported to you. I want to see three levels of how this person deals with conflict and what they define as conflict or disagreement. Because it's interesting in interviews, what I notice is people just kind of go, well, like they try to dance around it. And I was like, okay, how about disagreement? How about an uncomfortable conversation for you? The first flag for me is if they cannot bring a single example of something like that. You can't tell me that there is never been an uncomfortable conversation. And if that's the case, that's a huge flag. That person will never bring something to you. A lot of times what happens is they will implode or explode at some point or just walk out. And so to me, I'm like, that's one. Two is also particularly with leadership or any position where the person particularly going to supervise somebody, even if it's one person, is I want to hear how do they deal with those who they report to? How do they manage up? How do they talk to colleagues, people that they supposedly have no power over? And how do they kind of have conversations, difficult ones, with those that they do have power over, or at least, perceived? Um, you'll be surprised sometimes. It's a fascinating conversation. So that's the part of those hard questions. Or I'll bring some of the questions as well as an examples. And then urgency driving decisions. I see this time and time again. We need to get somebody right now, like yesterday. Because every time I come on the interview, which I do now daily, interviewing people like, well, when do you need this position filled? I was like, if you ask a hiring manager, they would say yesterday. And I think any hiring manager, but I urge you to see if there's urgency. I understand that, but still try to kind of physically make space before you make the decision or how you make those decisions. So notice that urgency. I'm going to pause. Any thoughts, reflections, questions before we move to above the line hiring? There's something in the chat. Let me see. Or I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Cross-trained to work across housekeeping guest services. Yep, which creates some interesting. Well, actually, this is a great one, Alexander. When you're hiring, I think what to me would be a great explicit way to say, like, yes, we're hiring for this role, and we have everybody cross-trained here. And that's a very good, honest conversation in the beginning because you would be, I mean, not would be surprised, but like somebody working in the kitchen might not be okay with working in housekeeping and vice versa. Or like actually, the kitchen is not sometimes the easiest skills to transfer and train, at least, Um, or they'll be like, yeah, it's fine, but you could feel it when they say like, yeah, it's okay. And cross training them would be okay, but are they in the right place for you, to do other roles? So that's exactly a great example is because you're cross training everybody and because you're seasonal, you might be talking to somebody who is in guest services that you interviewed. And then you just kind of ask some questions about, well, have you done, maybe I would add questions then that would cover some of the other areas in your organization. So then they'll be like, if, for example, it's guest services, and you're like, yeah, they're fine as a candidate for guest services. But then they start talking that I'm going to make it up right now, but their passion is they love cooking at home, like actually that happens quite a bit. And you're like, well, do you have any experience? And like, no, I don't have experience, but I love this and I love that and I love, whatever, everything else. And you go, oh, wait a minute, like you would be great at, or like somebody in housekeeping, that actually happens quite a bit. They get put in a certain box. It's just housekeepers. But when you start talking to the person and seeing like they might be a terrific guest services person as a primary person, um, because that interaction with guests sometimes it's harder to find that skill, the right skill from the people than cleaning rooms. However, a good housekeeper that's on point and like is very clear with the rooms are pristine to the point I was like, don't touch that. Like leave them to what they are. So all of that is for me in interviewing, what I don't like or what I don't encourage is changing your mind constantly, right? It's the part is like figure out what you're recruiting, be explicit with employee, for example, like, yeah, we have a lot of turnover at this moment, or this department is we're kind of starting fresh with this department, all skills are welcome. What are the things you can bring forward? But this is your job, and this is what we would like from you in terms of your job, and this is what's going to happen for the first at least 90 to 120 days. So then everybody is aware of the expectations. That's, I think, actually what I was going to say. Try not to change your expectations often and quickly. At least give a set amount of time within which person can operate, and so will you. So whatever they're learning and training and becoming and doing in their job, they can stay with that way. Um, let me come back to, yeah, let me come back to the sharing. So above the line hiring, what I would love for all of you is clear ownership. Who is this? What's this position? Who is this job reporting to? What's the structure like? Where do they fit in the organization? How does it work? Define outcomes. What does it look like for this position to be successful in so many, whatever, in whatever timeline? Transparent authority. I love retreat centers. I love nonprofits. We all want to be like the one level authority. At the end of the day, somebody's it. It's probably all of you on this call who are it to some degree. And so own it. Own who is the final decision maker, or own where there's authority sits, or own, like, for some reason, people just squirm around, or own that you're flat organization. Whatever that is, be transparent and clear. Testing for maturity. Testing for maturity is what that example, I think, for me, is around communication and particularly difficult conversations. How do they deal with stress? And so, in terms of the examples of the interviewing, for example, would be open-ended questions. Give me a time when such and such happens. Tell me when give me an example. So you literally take whatever in your bullet points that are really important in your job description, and you ask the person to tell you how that happened in their work before, to give you an example. And then you listen. That is the biggest piece, is to listen what the person is saying, not how they're painting the picture, what they're saying and what they're not saying. And that comes with experience, that comes with pay attention to your gut, pay attention to wherever your intuition center lies within you. Pay attention to that. Jot down some notes. You're like, there's something off. I have that all the time. They're like, there's something with this person. I can't quite figure this out. And I might do that at the second interview. So what I also do is tag team when I work with the client, and I am also on their recruitment team. Whether I interview first or I interview after, I always say we capture notes. Like, we use Jazz HR. I use quite a bit Jazz HR. So we use the platforms just so it's an easier flow. And I capture notes there. But what I always tell the hiring manager and myself, I capture those notes so then I can tag the next person to be like, can you explore this topic with this person? Because this was one thing that I was like, might need more time. And this is where you work as a team within your own leadership team, within your own organization, or whoever else you have to interview that person. Make sure there's more than just you interviewing people, just overall, because it's, a couple of heads is better than one. But that's just something. And then willing to lose a misaligned candidate. Watch for attachments. And I say it with a smile because I've done it. I was like, oh my God, this candidate is great. Like, they're great personality and they're super aligned with our values. And they had no examples of the conflict, for example, right? Or there's just something that they popped in or said something, and you go, I'm not quite sure. Like, they're great in all these ways, but there's this piece, and that but is for you to figure out, is it a big thing for you to manage later? Because that's the thing, the lack of clarity is management nonstop, long term in the future. For you, for this person, and actually for the team or the organization. And so that's the part. It's like, this compassion is not the absence of clarity. It's like, yes, there's this compassion, or the person is very likable and they're like, I really need this job, and I will do this and this, but you just feel it. And I get it, Alexandra. For example, your example is that it's, you have seasonal, you can't find workforce enough. It's a trial and error. It's always an ongoing experiment. It's easier to say, like, when somebody's in a bigger city and they have a better pool, absolutely. And at the same time, I still want you to pay attention when you compromise and how often that happens, and then what happens after all. And is it a pattern? Is it repeating itself all the time? Was there a question there as well? Let me see. I try to remind candidates of the importance of honesty and two-way interviews so that neither of it, yep, with surprises down the road. Drive to succeed is common in the success in interviews when in the position, but how to remind them that evaluating if the position is right for them is more important than winning the interview. Um, the can the Zoom one prayer with, can you put your name in there, please? That would be really helpful. The most, to me, the most you can do is, as you said, is remind them actually several times. You remind them at the beginning, Matthew, thank you so much. Um, so because you notice that and because you're very aware of it, I would kind of bookend it. I would say it from the very beginning of the interview is like this is an interview for both of us to make sure that this is the right position. It's not about just winning the position. And then you say this at the end as well. And then you kind of pause and let that sink in because I think you're doing all the right things, and there will still be people that their own lack of awareness is gonna feed into, no, no, I definitely, like they'll say what they think they need to say, and it's not from your lack of trying. So I just want you, that's more of what I would bring up is that you sprinkle it in throughout your conversation and then you let it go. And then you just pay attention to how that lands for you as you interviewing them. Um, Let me see. We're trying to think about recruitment channels so that we're making fewer compromises in the actual interview process. Yes, we're rural. Yes, there are fewer local candidates. So how do we find the people that we want to be here, Alexander? Is there any housing that's involved? Is there any housing that could be provided for people that work for you? You can unmute, by the way, I think. It's great for the,
Yeah,
but
sure. Yeah, I was gonna. So I typed this in
yeah.
the chat, but we do no, we do provide on-site housing and 3 meals a day, including on days that folks aren't working. So food and housing are provided, which helps buffer the very meager actual cash compensation we're able to offer. So that's
So I would, because you're seasonal, I'm thinking on the spot right now, but I would think of colleges, some towns that are nearby, not right there, but like places. And I would put that, and people would say, like, I actually have, I think Garth was here, but like when I work with some of my clients, there's something particular. So housing, I would put that in the job description. People, when we go, like for example, when we use search engines, and why I use, for example, Jazz HR, just because it posts in all kinds of places. I put that in a job description because all the other areas when we post somewhere can get lost. People don't, scroll, but they do for the most part. And I put it right at the top. Like, this is what this job is about. Here's what the wage range is, and here's where there's housing, there's meals provided. I would put that in, literally. There's 3 meals provided even when you don't work. So for those people that like that's a big benefit. It's a huge benefit, right? So put those up front. And then also I'll put like in different places and local colleges. Like I don't know what your window is, the seasonal window, but at least they might make it in summer. And then also might be that some jobs where it's high school students are already, the 16 and up can work that way as well. So I would work with their counselors because at least in my kids' school, it's like they're super active, the counselors are. And then the last thing I would say, if you just post it in your own, so when you're recruiting, particularly for you, for example, if you have like a bulk, it's seasonal and ends, look at platforms. And the reason you don't have to use Jazz HR, but like I've looked at bazillion different platforms, but you can pause it. So like you don't have to use it all year. You can pause it and not pay monthly, come back. But what happens is they post on all kinds of sites. And what I found out is that when you go and post individually a posting, it costs just almost as much for each one posting. So that's one thing. And the other thing that was used quite a bit by Esalen that people go, really? Was Craigslist. We use Craigslist quite a bit, and it was very effective in this on Monterey Peninsula because the hospitality industry uses it a lot. And so all of the hospitality jobs, I always posted on Craigslist and I paid whatever. And then I actually posted on, like I had my team post on Craigslist, like in other cities and wherever else. I was like, I don't care. Let's do that. So that was something people go, really? And I go, yeah, people still look at Craigslist, at least, And so those are just some of the ideas that I would just put, whatever those benefits that you could front load that would be really an important thing. Want to be here and are aligned with our mission and goals
That
as an
that was just a
organization.
tag on.
Oh,
Because
yeah, I
I said
see.
who are the people who want to be here, but then I was thinking about what you had just said about alignment. Someone may want to be at Shadowcliff, but there might be a misalignment that we
Oh
identify
my
in
God.
that. Yeah.
Oh, that was all the time. Like literally people would get on the call with me and ask them, they're like, I just want to work there. I'm like, nope, that's not how it works. You're not gonna last more than a month here because being here as a guest and being here as an employee under any circumstances is not happening. One other thing that I was very explicit at Esalen, and I continue actually to be explicit if I, work and interview for my clients, is this alignment of financial stability. Like the people would go, I just want to work there. It just happened a lot at Esalen. So I had the experience. It's like, and it's like, no, if you're tapping into a savings from very first day, I can guarantee you in 3 months, you are going to be resentful. You're going to be upset because I've had it. I had that as an experience. They definitely don't last more than 6 months and they're definitely upset. And they definitely don't remember that conversation when I said, all of this has to match. So that's again that actually coming back to that urgency and misalignment that like the below the line where we try to fit the person and like no, but this is the right person and I think it's gonna make it work. It's like being very honest, like no, this is how much it is. Make sure talking to your point, Matthew. It's like I tell the person there, be like, no, I need you to go and make sure that this pay is covering your expenses, whatever they are. It's your lifestyle. I have no qualms about it. But I remember some people going, oh, and some people actually coming back and saying, thank you, this won't work, literally based on that. But it saved so much pain for everybody, involved. So with limited resources that all of you have, yes, it's a hard conversation. Yes, it might pain you. You're like, but I want to pay you more. And people would ask for more. Um, you're clear with what you can do, and then you have to let go, even if it's the right candidate and you can't pay them what they're asking for. You will find somebody who will fit, might not be the star that you had that. And sometimes you might make a decision, you pay somebody more, but when you do that, please, that's a different conversation about compensation, but please pay attention. You're consistent. And when you make an exception, you can stand behind that exception, why you made that exception, if anybody asked you about it. And you could be in integrity with yourself. Let me see. Mama Donna shifted to hiring outside of the traditional. Yep, more and more finding clarity for whose person now is along with fit with the more traditional culture is the current conversation. It's a very valid conversation, Peter. And for you guys, it's like it's beautiful how you could do this for so long in Mount Madonna. And it's also like, even when I was there visiting, it's noticeable when you hired because the person was there and was in the community and their skills are not fully what you need. And so, and I'm like, I'm not so sure. And so that's just observing, you know what I mean? Just observing and listening. And that's finding that balance of finding that peace with the long-term community. It's like, well, we've done it this way and it worked. Well, it works until it didn't, and then also as the world grows and changes, it's like, yes, but we also need certain skills that are not present in our community. And how do we, and how do we invite folks and welcome them? That's another piece. When you're coming into organizations that are really tightly knit, it's a very much like an outside feeling coming in and how to embody, like how to kind of bring them along and have everybody mishmash well together is a different conversation. I'm aware it's 10:43, but I love that it's more of a conversation. So let me quickly see what I wanted you to pay attention to. Okay, the part about the authority clarity, what I wanted you to know this, the unclear authority to me, what sounds like. We're very collaborative. So the person is, we're hiring them. We're very collaborative. Everybody's contributing. We're making decisions on the fly all together. It's consensus, whatever that is. That's unclear. Like, where do they fit within them? Like, how do they navigate it? the worst to me is like, we'll figure it out together. We're just going to hire you and then we're going to figure out together how this role is going to really fit. And it's like, oh my God, it's very, very difficult. And the person might be like, oh, this is great. I'm really quick on my feet. Some people are. Those are the exception than the rule. Majority of humans, I find it, particularly in the level, in the line level, the entry level positions, they want clarity. They want to be told where their role is, what success looks like for them, that they can just do that job. And then as they progress in their mindset, they progress their growth, then there is the autonomy, then there is the accountability. Like there's different levels, but at the beginning, they just need to know if you do this, this is the great outcome. If you don't do this, that's not where we want to go. As opposed to, we'll all think about it. It's like, um, transparent authority sounds like you report to, this is your boss. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. This direct report and dotted line. I've noticed recently through a couple of my clients, it's like, oh, this person reports here, and then they have dotted line to like two other people, or even one. What I'm finding, this is literally from my experience, majority of people, they don't do well with this dotted line stuff. Then they're like reporting to three people, and then they're trying to figure out, are they the same level people? The dotted line people, a lot of times they're treating them as their direct employee, and then they're handing them stuff. So it's like, it's recorded. It's a shit show. I don't care that it's recorded. So it becomes a total circus. And guess who is not successful? The person who is having all these lines to people. That's a lot of people to like figure out and figure out a working relationship. Again, there are those beautiful stars and there's people that can do that. But for the majority, please be clear who they report to. What they own, what's their bucket? What is their thing that they're responsible for? And hopefully in your organization, like, this is when conflict arises, this is how we address it, this is what we do. And then you gotta model it. We're not doing the breakout, never mind. Let me see what I was saying. Oh, so that's part, the conflict capacity and maturity. So I think this is mainly the interview questions that I want you to see for the maturity. Tell me about a time that you won conflict or you had a disagreement with, and remember those three levels. When you disagree with a supervisor, what communication shuts you down? Don't be afraid to ask difficult questions, even if they're difficult for you. See how you feel as well when you're asking the question. And so it's like, notice, do people even know that they shut down? Or maybe they're more of a flight kind of person, or fight. Like, they might be like, I don't shut down. I actually talk right away. It's a conversation, but ask what's important to you. Don't shy away from it. What feedback was hard to hear? Have you received feedback that was hard to hear? And, what kind of feedback is hard to hear for you? Or how do you receive feedback that does not put you in a resistant, kind of mode? Those are really good questions to ask. Because you get to know this, but at least, and always remember, you're listening to how they tell a story, but always remember, there are people that interview really well. And, at the end of the day, just want to make time. And then I know Michael always wants 5 more minutes before. There are always people that, and you've asked all these questions, you've paid attention. They were a star, they were, and then, 45 days or something in, you're like, what did I miss? Please don't beat yourself up, but notice, if this is your first and only, that happens. If this is the pattern, meaning there's more than one, it's definitely worth looking into the pattern of what are you not paying attention to, what you're not noticing. But I can't kind of highlight enough, then this whole recruitment, the whole process, the hiring happens. The first 90 days are the most essential time that you could make it or break it altogether. The person, just like Matthew, to your point, is that I actually tell that. So when I have I have a practice that with clients I set up. It's literally the 30, 60, 90-day check-in where the hiring manager does theirs, but I as HR do mine because then I check actually how the manager is doing too. This is actually how I find out when the managers are not doing well in these conversations, or what their patterns are, because I don't work with them or for them, right? And so, but it's in this 90 days where I tell every single employee in whatever organization I talk to, it is your time to interview the organization just as much as you are being still interviewed. It's the same. This is your responsibility to pay attention to what works for you, what doesn't work for you, to address it. It's both. It's both sides. It's not one-sided. And so I can't, emphasize enough to, as this, it's like, okay, great, we hired, now run. There's no onboarding. There's no like anything else. Like you figure it out. We're all gonna figure it out. And then it's chaos. And that's not successful for anybody, actually. It's not setting the other person for success. It's not kind. If we're coming back to kindness, it's not. And coming back to boundaries, like we're children, we all grew up, we're in adult bodies, but we all have the same nervous systems, however we grew up. We need that big, some people need smaller fence around them, some people need a much larger territory, but we all need this safety net that we could touch, be like, okay, here's my kind of surrounding, here's where I can occupy it safely and I can kind of walk around, do things, and feel safe enough. And that thing gets squished, stretched all over the place, changes. What's happening? It is unsettling for nervous systems. And when our nervous systems are dysregulated, we can't perform well at all. So that's back to that piece as well. Let me see. There was another thing, chat. Oh, you guys used to be neighbors. Oh, that's cool. Last 5 minutes. Any thoughts? I would love to hear. Yeah, I would love to hear what resonated, maybe, or what's staying with you, or maybe a thing that you're going to go think about now as you recruit or interview. Yeah, as we had this, for the most part, one-way conversation. I like this to be dialogues. Anything, anybody?
No, I've talked a lot already, but I'll just say that I did recognize myself in a lot of the identities that you named in the second slide. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes many of those identities are present in the same interview.
Mhm.
And then sometimes there's a sort of chameleonic shifting between them depending on what emerges in the interview process. And it's useful for me to just pay attention to that, just be mindful of, oh, which of those identities is showing up in this conversation. And allow that, maybe just note that that's there, and but be more intentional about how do I want to show up to every single one of these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the part, that's the thing. We can wear all of them as long as you're aware. And I'm like, judgment is important. You are making a decision for the organization. I need you to critically think, not just like, I think it's a good idea. So yeah, that's the part. Bob, yes.
Yeah, no, I just I I think I've been practicing the 30, 60, 90
Mm.
pattern review pretty well, but I'm really wondering what happens after 30, 60, 90, like when we get to annual review and then kind of for more long-term employees.
My suggestion, and not everybody is open organizations, but my suggestion is actually every 6 months you have a conversation. So you have an annual review, but midway, there is still a conversation.
Mm.
Obviously, ideally, it's like you have a quarterly, some kind of a, in a more like expanded check-in, but it's just that's a lot of time for people if they have a lot of people reporting to them. If you have
And
a small,
what's
yeah,
the like core question to ask at 6 months, say, or quarterly?
good question, actually. I'll have to think about it. Um, I would always look at question to be, I always wanted to pay attention to what the person was setting as their, at least like one, as their professional goal and as their personal goal, like wherever they want to go, so you can support them. And so checking in, I think, kind of like, where do you feel you're on those, and where do you need support? Because as leaders, it's like, but you also need to think, where do you think they are on those goals? Because where the person says, oh, I'm here and I want support this, and it's like, I don't know, the world is the oyster. This is your time to give honest feedback if that's not the case for you, right? And then still, as a leader, you are there to provide support. And support is also giving feedback and finding what resources do they need, and do they need some training? And are they open to the training, or are they resistant to the training? And then you have that conversation, be like, I'm noticing, for example, you're resistant to what I'm suggesting. So I would like you to bring forward a different training in the same direction that you would think would work for you, but I would like to see that skill in you in the next 6 months. Can we
That's
agree
very
on
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, can
that's
we
good.
agree on that? And so that's the, like, you are steering the ship. To me, it's like directionally. Can you get everybody directionally going the same way? But it's always important for any of us. How does my personal and my professional, how do they meet? And if I can speak for me at least, for sure. That's what retained me at Esalen for a long time, because I could merge those together. But I always had the conversations with at least the last leader I worked for. Yeah, thank you. There was something else. I love this. Oh yeah, this is about the onboarding. Any other last reflection, last question?
What you said about nervous systems and like all the more reason to be clear and frank and create that open space and opportunity to talk about things like finances. I think you mentioned earlier something about after 3 months, if you've been dipping out of your savings, you're just going to be miserable after 6 months. So I've completely lacked that. I think my org has completely lacked that kind of like I don't know what that would look like really. Like what questions we just ask, like if like do you have enough to make it here and to live here on this amount of money every month? But every so often people are somehow surprised once they get here. So
Well, I think your key statement at the moment is every so often. So you already have that question. So kudos. It just like as I told Matthew, like you can sprinkle it through the conversation a couple of times, and then it's personal responsibility of the other individual. And some of them are going to think that that's it, and whatever their relationship with their finances and money, that would catch up with them at some place. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's on your time while they're working with you. But again, at least for me, it's always important that if I said something explicitly, if I communicated it, I've done my part. At least I've done my part and I've brought it to their attention. And so after that, sure, things might unravel, they might change, they might differ, but that at least that part was done. It's not like, how did you not think about it, or where did this come from? It's kind of like, okay, well, we had this conversation, I understand. And then the day I also had the difficult conversation with people had to go, and I continued asking the same questions, and I continued highlighting maybe a lot more, you know what I mean? A lot more often, be like, hey, recently I've had this experience. So I just really want to bring it to you that you need to sit down and do a spreadsheets. I don't know what that looks like. So then this is a successful relationship long term. That's what I would say. Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. It's 10:58. Michael, back to you. This is a delight. I love this.
Yeah, I love every time I'm in one of these calls, I learn more. I wish I could go back and be an executive director of a retreat center and apply these skills. And I'm sure that you all will. We have another community call tomorrow, which isn't going to be about learning. It's going to be about how we're feeling in the state of how we are in the world right now and what it means to be leaders of these beautiful sacred places. So if your heart needs to just like share and be with people who are concerned about what's going on, Kirsten Vandergiesen Rietzma from the Stewardship Committee, director at Gilchrist, and I are going to hold space just for a heart moment, and just to talk and share and see where we're going to go together as a collective, collaborative group. And The next tea with Tatyana is on April 14th, Communication Skills for Difficult Conversations. It's going to be great. It's the last in the 6-part series. And there's a new 3-part series on onboarding, which Bob, will be right about 30, 60, 90, 6 months. Like all of that piece is how do we really build people up successfully? So, and lastly, if you're not a member of RCC, I would really encourage you to check out the membership information. And if membership is a challenge for you financially, we have a philanthropist who is underwriting for folks who can't currently financially do that. So if you or a center you know needs support to be part of this collaborative, we'd love to help you get there. Lastly, Tatyana, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. As always, I really appreciate your knowledge and your joy that you bring to HR. I think it makes me want to do more HR because you're just so enthusiastic about it, and I just love it.
Not all HR feels like this, but yes.
And Bob, just to answer your question, membership can be as an organization or as an individual. So both are opportunities. And you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to have a one-on-one with folks about membership anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the rest of it, and see you soon.
Bye.